Oh, we live streaming? Hell yeah.
Okay. Let me just confirm that everything looks good on my end
Oh,
before
so
we.
we're live.
Yeah, we're
Nice.
live. Yeah,
Hell yeah.
yeah.
So
Um,
where's it being transmitted to? Like YouTube, Twitch?
so just to confirm, yeah, we are live.
Oh, hell yeah. Let me see.
So just to confirm, yeah, we are live. Yeah.
There's some lag in there, but that's unavoidable.
All right,
Oh,
man.
that's really cool, actually.
Yeah. So let's begin. We're talking about the Venezuelan crisis. I'm here in New Mexico in Albuquerque. Pedro is in Spain.
Yeah. Uh, yo soy español, español, español.
Yeah, we both went to UNM together. We like to talk shit.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
we we're pretty international. Pedro's well traveled. I'm relatively well traveled. Um, so yeah, we're trying to bullshit. We like to come up with um, solutions to the world, geopolitical crises. We also like to ponder if the world would have been different if Hitler had done ayahuasca, maybe.
Man, I'm not so sure anymore, man. You know, from like a Hinduistic perspective, it's like maybe Hitler, will have seen like that is like his place in the world, like that was like his, like, how do you call like a theater, like his lines in the history, and it's like, well, it's what did I have to do? It's what I gotta do, you know.
Sure, sure. Do you think now that the Palestinian-Israeli conflict is kind of unraveling, do you do you think, and we're using humor here, right? We're being humorous, but
Yeah,
we're
yeah,
also
yeah,
kind of putting a little bit of salt on the theory. Do you
yeah.
do you do you now kind of maybe perceive World War II differently with the Palestinian conflict right now?
Not really, fundamentally speaking, and it's that I'm of the fundamental belief that if you start shit, you will find out, fuck around, find out, And it's like the Germans started World War II, and obviously they were the bad guys. There's no doubt about that. And I've been hearing like this whole like thing that because of like the Israeli war crimes, and maybe like there is some justification for like what happened to them in World War II. My opinion on the matter is that fundamentally speaking, I think that Israel as a state, should exist. I know that that is a very unpopular opinion among some people, also very unpopular amongst another. But it cannot be denied that Israel, in this last, how long has the big conflict been going? Almost a year, right? Uh, they've made a lot of mistakes, and they've given a lot of political ammunition to like their opponents. And to be honest, like there has been like situations, recorded situations of complete and total unnecessary cruelty perpetrated by the IDF against like innocent Palestinian people.
True.
It's like a distinction needs to be made between like your normal civilian and like the people that fight against the Hamas combatants. Like October 7th was disgusting. You know, like I saw like the footage of like the naked woman like being dragged around by like the Hamas fighters. We know that they kill a bunch of innocent people, they kill babies, underage people, they rape women. But the answer of Israel, I think that in the long term, it's actually hurting them. You know, especially when you have Jesus Christ, you have like people in like the Israeli government like outright calling genocide against the people in Gaza. And like people in Israel themselves, they are actually protesting against Netanyahu. You know, like this whole conflict actually benefited Netanyahu because Netanyahu was actually being investigated for corruption. You know,
Hmm.
but he's like grabbing into like this conflict. So that it's possible for him to like divert the attention of like the public and like other like political parties in regards to like his management.
Sure.
It is super complicated, and like I see myself like going from one side to the other. And it's like I wish that there was like an easy solution.
Uh, what would you say? I I'm not really sure. 100% what is true, what is not true. What is meant to be propaganda, what is supposed to be real life. Uh, you know, facts. So the reason I brought up World War II is because the correlation is that Palestine were co-belligerents with Nazi Germany. It could have easily been that the Jews uh, were on the other side of the coin and the Palestinians oppressing the Jews. Hitler had more of a relation towards the Arabic speaking world. He was more interested in it, and so I just think that, like, in World War II, the invasion happened westward,
Yeah,
and then right now we have an invasion happening eastward. Russia to Ukraine.
yeah, yeah,
And so it just seems that, like, that change of waves, the change of wind, right, kind of thing.
yeah,
Um, the the path of least resistance and whatever. So I'm not. I don't choose a side. I don't go protest for the Palestinians, but nor do I lean to the Israeli side. But
yeah,
I do think that something's happening. There's a real life violent situation happening over there at the moment,
yeah,
and right now Israel has some people against them. They united a coalition of Arabic states,
yeah.
ideologies against them.
No, pretty much. Yeah. I mean, I think that this kind of goes back, and I'm not sure how true it is, but it was kind of speculated, like in the aftermath of the October 7th attack, that this attack was actually perpetrated by Iran. And the reason why they did it is because Israel and Saudi Arabia are actually in the process of negotiations in order to create a military alliance, in order to contain the influence of Iran in the Middle East. As Iran as pretty much being like the spearhead of like the Arabic and Muslim coalition against Israel, and also you could say against like the West, you know. And it's kind of curious how this goes on because, for example, Russia used to kind of be considered so kind of like the spearhead of like against Islamic and jihadist culture,
Yeah, we
like
had the Chechen War. The Chechen War.
the Chechen wars, like the Afghanistan
Mhm.
interventions,
Yeah.
uh, the stance, I think it was like, for example, in Kazakhstan, in which they brought like more secular laws against like the Muslim uh, customs that existed in that country. I actually saw an interesting movie about that. You need to watch it. I think you will like it.
Mm. Cool.
It's one of those Soviet westerns.
Instead of a freaking what is it, like, Cowboys, the revolver, they take out the PPSH. They're like,
It's not cowboys, but it actually follows the same vibe.
Mhm.
Like a man, rock man in the desert, wandering around, and he sees injustice, and he makes an effort to like correct it.
Mhm.
Like that is actually like something that exists like within like the Soviet cinematographic imaginary.
Yeah.
And they're actually pretty entertaining. It also helps that Stalin was a huge admirer of cowboy movies. He really liked what's his name, John Wayne.
John Wayne. Yeah.
But now, Iran and Russia, even though they're diametrically opposed ideologically, now they're working together. And Iran has actually been like selling drones to Russia in order to like help them in their
In the
war
Ukraine.
efforts in Ukraine.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that shift that's polarization in the globalized world. That shift definitely gained the favor of Muslims in Russia. Like, for example, Russia, the two most highest countries that receive immigrants are Russia, or is the U.S. first, and then Russia. Russia second. So Russia has a lot of Muslims. There's white Muslims. There's Muslims from Kazakhstan, from Pakistan. There's
Yeah,
people all over, right? So I thought
yeah,
that was interesting. Is that like I think Hitler kind of lost that race. You know, Germany as a whole lost that race to get in touch with the Arabic world. Russia was like, hey, we're already in Asia and we're going to have these kind of incursions, into Kazakhstan, enforce some laws. Um, Dude, Russia has a diplomatic ties with Vietnam, so it's like, so do we, but at the same time, it's just funny how that shift is kind of happening and why I think the shift for us should more go towards Latin America,
yeah,
Central
yeah.
America and all that.
You know, that's actually an interesting thing you said about Latin America because I would say, for example, here in Spain, there is kind of like this thinking, especially amongst like more like conservative people, who are more into like historical revisionism and all of that about like the idea of pan-Hispanism. I don't know if you heard of it, and it's the idea that Spain should actually like not so much actually like get entangled with relationship with Europe as over the last 50 years there's been kind of like a lot of like competition, especially like in the economic and the industrial realm, especially with countries like France and Germany, that over time actually led to Spain becoming a deindustrialized country. We, Spain used to be like 30% industry, and afterwards, I think at the beginning of the 2000s, it was around 15%. That of course, like that always comes with issues. Like just look at America, look at Detroit.
Sure.
And but now it's like the idea that maybe instead of that, we should actually focus more on like a unification project of South America, particularly Hispanic America,
Mhm.
and kind of makes sense when you think, for example, that if Europe was able to like create like this union, even though they have vastly different cultures, vastly different languages and histories, a country, a region that has always been in strong diametric opposition with each other. War was an existential issue for all of them for a long time. Why not South America when we have like literally the same languages and the same languages and also like the same religion,
Mhm.
Catholicism, and then you realize that it will actually be very beneficial for South America to actually be united, as they will actually be able to like compete with like the hegemons of North America and Europe. We have to leave out Mexico. I'm sorry, man, but uh,
Hey
I'm-
man, why? Why? Yo, fuck yeah, we have the US. I'm just kidding.
I'm fucking with you, man.
Yeah.
I love you, Mexicans.
The have you
Yeah,
seen the Key and Peele video
yeah,
that
yeah. It's funny. Those guys are funny.
yeah, he's like going around the White House and like he goes up to United States, he's like they have like a brief tense moment and then they just hug it out. It's just like yeah, it's just hilarious.
Yeah, yeah,
No, that's an interesting point. So that idea is essentially saying that or proposes that Spain should have some sort of advantage uh, with creating these ties to Latin America.
yeah,
Because first of all, the language is there. The history is there. It's a violent history, but we're in the future now, right? Like the past is foreign land.
Yeah,
So I think that's an interesting proposal because I heard the idea of like the what would you say pan hispano the pan hispano americano? What is it?
pan-Hispanism, pan-Hispanism.
Ah, okay. Yeah, yeah, that's interesting. Um, I wonder what the British would think about that. You know,
I mean, I know that I'm gonna get like some criticism over this, but I do believe that fundamentally the independence of South American countries, you know, I think it was a mistake. You know, I think that over time, Spain will have to like under precepts of pragmatism abandon South America because it was very hard to defend. And actually, imperialism is not really profitable because it costs a lot of money to like maintain those regions.
yeah,
So what we could have done instead was create like a divide, like the different virreinatos, because they were like kingdoms in themselves that function like under Spanish law, and actually like let them have independence, but at the same time we kind of functioning within like a commonwealth, kind of like what the British did after World War II. Like the British were not able to like maintain their colonies; they
hmm
were unable to.
yeah.
So
I
what
mean,
they did,
France sold their land
yeah,
to the U.S. It was the being across the ocean is not easy.
no, yeah, they lost the United States, you know,
Yeah,
and they lost it in part because Spain and France were aiding the American colonialists and
Mhm.
to overthrow the British, you know, because fuck England.
Yeah.
But yeah,
No.
but yeah, like, but now the UK actually has quite an advantage position in regards to that because they have the Commonwealth of Nations, you know, countries like Australia, New Zealand, Canada, you know, they have
Yeah.
good relationship with the United States, you know. South Africa, it's still there, you know. India, they actually still have a good model. A lot of Indians actually look up to the United Kingdom
Yeah.
because it's a kind of
For
as a
sure.
point of reference towards like development of their nation.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah. Yeah. I think Britain would probably have more of um, a geopolitical familiarity with the U.S. Um, because they're part of Europe, but at the same time, like they have issues with like maritime battles, right? Like the
yeah,
access to water, um, the which is access to economic profit. For fishing and all that stuff. Like this is a primitive idea, but what I'm trying to say is that the location of that country matters.
yeah, yeah,
The language that they have matters, and the imperialistic history that they have matters. As you mentioned, some will probably have more of a allied relationship to their past imperialistic, um,
yeah,
you know, history, and others will have more of a no, we're not going to go there. You know,
yeah,
so I think it's like for new like for example for New Mexico, right? Because I'm over here in New Mexico, and you're familiar with New Mexico.
yeah.
We share
My second home.
nice. Yeah, we share two border states with Mexico, Sonora and Chihuahua,
Hmm.
and we're starting to get increasingly infiltrated by not the Mexican government, not the Mexican cartels, not that kind of stuff, but maybe by I'm not trying to get too esoteric, right? But
Impossible for you, man.
yeah, but suppose there are other forces at work, right? Metaphysical forces. Mexico is the land of, you know, de la muerte, right? It's
Yeah,
revered
yeah.
over. So I
It's
think, yeah,
yeah,
it's like it's kind of encroaching over here because we're part of that land. Our land is very muerte like. You know, we revere that kind of culture, that kind of idea, and New Mexico is not exempt from that.
Yeah.
And
I
that's what's
mean,
scary about Mexico.
absolutely. I mean, I will say, it's like it is impressive, like that synchronicity, like that mixture of like, because yeah, like Catholicism, like the Spanish Catholicism had a strong influence, but it actually kind of, instead of really like completely deleting like the cultures of like the different like indigenous societies in there, a lot of times they actually got intermixed, and that actually led to like the creation of like new cultures. And what better, for example of that than El Dia de los Muertos
Yeah.
in Mexico City. And you actually see like that artistic art style, which is kind of like a mixture of like both like Mayan Aztec, but also like pre-Hispanic cultures, you know, along with like some of like the concept of memento mori,
Hmm.
which used to be like a very strong influence during like the Gothic influences of the church,
Yeah.
which is like this concept of like, hey, remember, you're going to die.
Hmm.
You are going to die. You're mortal. Remember that. Which, kind of like the saying, is like, all roads lead to Rome. It kind of reminds me of when the emperors in Rome, like they will get like condecorated because of victory in war. They will get like the crown and they were like the purple, symbol of like status and money and all of that. But they all have like someone like whispering behind, like memento mori,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
remember, this is just temporal.
Yeah.
And I feel like New Mexico being like, it's a tough land, man. It's a desert.
Mhm.
It's rough to live in there. It strives from like that sort of culture.
No, it's very different over here in the sense of our uh, political struggle, our geopolitical place in the world.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
yeah, I think Mexico and New Mexico will eventually have some sort of clash, whether it's culturally, spiritually, like esoteric or economic. There's also cohesion
yeah, yeah,
because we have three ports of entry in New Mexico, and they're all getting development.
yeah, yeah,
And so I think that's a really good thing as well. Is like Mexico is the best trading partner the United States has.
yeah.
That's debatable, but I'm gonna just say it in comparison to China.
I mean,
But yeah.
yeah, like I don't know if you will agree with me to say that maybe New Mexico, compared to at least to like other American states, is kind pretty regionalistic. You know, like I remember like back then, for example, when I was living in New Mexico, the UNM, like people were actually complaining that there were a lot more Texans arriving to the state.
Mhm.
And there's kind of like this, like this concept of like that person is an outsider, you know. And I don't know if you will agree with me with that maybe there's a little bit of that like going on. And I wonder if like the Spanish actually had some influence, because if there is something to learn about the Spanish, is that they are super fratricida people,
Mhm.
you know.
Yeah,
Like they'll find an excuse to create like a difference, and like, like try to grab as much or like focus so much on the difference
yeah,
in
yeah,
order to like create like some sort of tribalism.
yeah, yeah. No, I remember whenever I went to Barcelona and I met a traveler there, just like in the breakfast area, and
Hmm.
he's like, "Where are you from?" I was like, "I'm from New Mexico, this the states," and he made it a point that America sucked. He was like, all you do is cause war. All y'all do is all y'all are is greedy. He's like, y'all have like just everything, right? Everything that a typical
Okay.
European would say.
Yeah, very fun at parties.
Yeah, but you know, I I just remember that because it's just funny how a European would is telling a Mexican American that, right?
Yeah,
And I'm like,
yeah,
that's so interesting, right? It's like I'm not even
yeah,
white, and I'm not even totally
yeah.
Mexican.
uh,
But I wanted to ask you, maybe for the people that are gonna see this or are curious, what was your specialty at UNM, and like, what would you consider your focus right now in the sense of like the region that you're looking at, and you're
yeah.
keeping up with, and also, what was your focus as well? Like, what was your big idea? What was your capstone and all that?
Well, I studied political science and international studies with a focus on peace, conflict, and diplomacy applied to Europe. Like, yeah, very smart of me. Like, study that in America. But with those studies, I'm actually gonna do like a master's here in Europe, so I can find actually specialize on that area. Because I don't know, it's there's just something that attracts to me about it. Maybe it's because I love history and all of that. And it's because it's very interesting, like the history of Europe, fundamentally speaking. It's because don't, for example, take offense like the European, criticizing the America, because if there is something that you learn about like European people here is that they always talk shit about their neighbors.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I do it myself. I'm not gonna lie. I'm not gonna lie. I'll go on an anti-French, anti-English, anti-Dutch rant.
Yeah. No,
And
same. Same.
you know, but at the same time, it's like we're just fucking around. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
we're just fucking around. Fundamentally, we're trade partners and everything. Even though the more you actually start reading about this stuff, it's like the more you realize is that keep in mind, I need to read more about it, but maybe the European Union was not the best thing that happened to Spain. Yeah, I know it's a big thing because I used to suck the dick of the EU.
We'll debate about it. We'll talk
We
about
will
it.
debate about it.
Yeah. No, I remember we would
Yeah, go ahead.
with our friend
Yeah,
Daniel, which is more of like a psychologist.
yeah, yeah.
We would debate these kind of.
Yeah, we will debate it. Well, Daniel just wanted to watch the football game. He told us to shut up.
But yeah, he had the most wisest things to say. He had the wisest things to say.
Shut the fuck up.
I think something that Daniel even brought up. One of our friends, he's like kind of like a hypnotherapist kind of guy,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
he mentioned that like countries along the equator, are not necessarily always violent, but that they're susceptible to violence, and that is pretty uh, true with in the sense of like the equator that runs through Africa, those regions,
Mm,
also like in Southeast Asia as well. Um, I mean, I don't know how true that can be, but I think the idea was that like the the pathogens, um, there's disease, stuff like that, right?
yeah,
And just because there's no war in those regions doesn't mean it's violent. It's violent. It's fucking hot.
yeah, yeah.
It's hot. It's violent.
Uh, I will, for example, say that I think like less than that, it has more to do, and this is being criticized because of Eurocentric, but I actually think it makes a lot of sense, and it's that the higher a population density, the more prone a society is actually to like engage in warfare. Because I feel like the reason why, for example, regions like Africa, did not have like, and they did have kingdoms, mind you, they actually had kingdoms, but they never really were able to like create like, for example, one unitary like kingdom all throughout the region. And part of it is just because of how big the area is, and how difficult transportation is, like movement of troops.
Yeah.
You have like the African tropical areas. That, yeah, good luck trying to like navigate that area,
Yeah.
especially with an army. You know,
Yeah.
like the logistics of that and like all the sickness.
Yeah.
It is absolute logistical nightmare. You
Yeah.
know, compare that to like a region like Europe that is a lot more concentric,
Yeah.
a lot less space, and a lot more like emphasis on like key areas, or like strategic areas. And then you'll actually notice that, yeah, it actually makes sense that there will actually be more conflicts, more warfare, you know, in order to like, secure like what's little out there, But I can also see like why this argument actually kind of falls short, because you also observe, for example, like sophisticated civilizations and empires also in China,
Hmm.
where you have like the Han Dynasty, or like South America, where you had like the Aztec Incans, and previously the Mayans. But it does make you wonder then why was there anything like as big as that, even though they were actually in Africa, but for example in North America, you know, like what was it about North America that made it so that there was never like a giant civilization, kind of like the Roman Empire.
So far as we know of, right? Like,
Now we know about that's true. Like we still need to make a lot of researches about that too. I
um,
mean, the biggest thing I can think of is the Iraqis, the Iroquois, that were actually, I think they're actually very interesting. Actually, Thomas Jefferson took like a lot of inspiration from the Iraqis uh, when he was writing actually the American Constitution.
mhm. You've been to China, right?
I've been to China. Yeah, yeah. I
Oh.
love China. I love Xi Jinping, man. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
stand up
Nothing.
for stand
Yeah.
up for Xi Jinping.
Xi Jinping, Xi Jinping, Xi Jinping.
Ole, 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 ole. Yeah, have you seen the meme where it's like el corazón de Maradona está en Argentina, pero su nariz en Colombia?
uh, yeah,
Yeah, yeah, it's interesting. These also the landlocked perspective, right? Of like a country that's landlocked. The susceptibility to warfare. But
yeah.
what about China? Like, tell us about China.
Listen, I wish I could tell you more about it, but the thing is, like Chinese history is extremely dense. You know, the book I could actually recommend the most that actually Julia read is Romance of the Three Kingdoms. That is actually very interesting because it actually talks about like a war period in China, and that actually led to, I think, the implementation of the Qi dynasty. And China was actually a place where there was a lot of warfare. you know and a big factor, for example, in wars was actually like access to river points, because part of the reason why China was actually able to develop so fast and amass like a quick population, massive populations, such a short period of time, it was because they had very powerful, very long, and very spacious rivers that made it
Mhm.
easy transportation, irrigation, and also like shipbuilding. You know, that actually led to like the construction of like sophisticated like civilizational and civilizational developments, and like the control of like a major empire in most regions. Like
Mhm.
the fact that the Chinese empire exists. It, it's impressive. You know,
Yeah.
makes you. This is where you're always thinking like, why didn't Europe ended up having like a unified kingdom or a unified civilization? Maybe the Romans. But after that, after the Romans, everything went to shit. But the Chinese have always been like unified.
Yeah, yeah. That. So which city did you go to, or like where did you go?
I went to two regions. The first one, Guangzhou, which is more of a commercial hub. There's a lot like a ports, industry, factories, services. It's a place where you go to make money. And then I actually went to Yunnan. Another thing about Guangzhou is that they speak Cantonese in there, not Mandarin. I mean, Mandarin is the official language all across China, but they also have like the regional language, kind of like Spain, you know. And then there is Yunnan. Now, Yunnan actually I really enjoy because Yunnan actually is pretty close to Tibet, and there is actually like a lot like Buddhistic, what remains of Buddhistic traditions in that region, and there's also like minority languages in there, like the Bashis, for example, who actually their calligraphy system is actually pretty much like a hieroglyphic, very ancient stuff. That I think as of right now, I think only like 100 people speak it today. You know,
Interesting.
and I wish I could have seen more of it. It's a beautiful city. I saw like the three pagodas, which were like in a very important like Buddhist structures during their time. The sad reality is that after the Cultural Revolution, all of that stuff was actually destroyed and deleted. Now the Chinese government has been attempting to reconstruct it, but the problem is that they reconstruct it, but they try to reconstruct it within the context of the Communist Party doctrines. The way I say like, fuck that shit. But
Yeah. Would you go back to China?
yeah, I will. Yeah. I mean, Julia's family lives in there, so.
Okay. Cool. Cool. What if you got to, let's say there was crisis all over the world, right? Much more than there is now. um, what would your safe spot be? Like, what would your safe haven be? Let's say New Mexico is also fucked. Like, what countries come to mind for you?
Bro, I feel like it's always been South America.
Mhm. I was
South
thinking,
America.
like, yeah.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I was thinking like Iceland, Bolivia,
Yeah, yeah.
super south of Argentina, maybe. Uh,
Uh, yeah, man. Yeah, like North America, I'm not even sure anymore because I was gonna say maybe like Montana, but the problem with Montana is that they actually have like nuclear launching areas in there. So if shit hits the fan, Montana's gonna get hit.
yeah.
You know.
I think New Mexico will as well.
Yeah, man. But that's because America keeps their UFO research. Their special chips in there. They gotta hit those. Man.
No, that's true. I remember when we did our capstone for CPAD, you had a presentation about uh, psychedelic um, medicines around the world, or you had an argument, for it. And I'm pretty interested. Like what did you write about? What did you talk about?
I was making basically like a broad generalization. I need to point out that I was young back then, and I definitely could have improved my methodology and strengthened my arguments. But I do hold that you know psychedelics have always been like an important aspect of human history and also human evolution. You know, and I just wish that we could have more research about it. I just don't think it's productive for the American government to not allow these substances to actually be investigated. Because most of them are Schedule One,
Mhm.
and Schedule One says that they have no medicinal utility. And I don't know why they made this decision. It could have been because of pharmaceutical interest. It could be because some covered form of like social engineering. I do not know. But back in New Mexico, I was pretty interested in the works of ethnobotanist Terence McKenna, you know, and he had like the very,
That's the homie. That's the homie.
I love that saying, like take it easy,
But
but
take
take
it.
it.
The
Yeah.
cultural boundaries.
I don't think culture is necessarily bad, you know, but you can definitely get blinded by it, you know. If culture, it's a whole topic, but he has like the hypothesis that psychedelics, for example, magic mushrooms, they actually helped human beings actually evolve, you know, like especially because we do have research today that actually indicate that psilocybin, which is like the main chemical component of the magic mushrooms, actually led to neurogenesis and like actually created like new pathways of like neuronal connections, you know. And out of that, I will say that we owe a lot of that to like our problem solving skills, our capacity of like pattern recognitions, you know, and culture, you know, religious culture, which actually helped like bound and create like the first civilizations, you know. And there is actually like a histographic movement that is actually working towards like researching and bringing to light like how like this substances actually have been part of humanity through history, you know. Like ancient Greece, they probably used something that was akin to like LSD, you know, out of like the fermentation of a mushroom that grew out of wheat, out of rye, you know, and they call it a kikale. That when you read like what Plato or Aristotle actually went through, it really sounds like some sort of like religious experience, you know, like something like coming out of your senses, getting out of your head, you know. The Japanese, you know, they were growing cannabis for a long while. Cannabis actually grows naturally in the island, and the
Hmm.
Japanese
I
government
don't
has
know.
actually, yeah, there's actually this giant forest of cannabis in the island, and the Japanese government has actually been trying to like destroy it, but the problem is that there's too much of it, and
That's hilarious. Oh,
maybe out
man.
of that is that they got the whole tentacle porn idea, you know.
Wow. Other than that, that's their second biggest accomplishment. They got weed. Dude, I'd be so interested to go to Japan, much more than I don't know. I'd love to go to China. Like, if you ever go to China, bro, I think I might just go with you,
Oh,
bro.
yeah. We have a blast in Junan. Junan is very beautiful and everything. I will say though that as someone who is mostly attracted towards like culture and history, the sad reality with China is that a lot of it was lost. You know, especially if you go to like the more coastal areas. You know, in fact, I remember I actually met like this Chinese American man who was actually also visiting Junan, and he was actually talking about how if you actually want to see real Chinese culture, go to Malaysia.
Hmm. Interesting.
Yeah.
No. Um, I think whenever I was in Russia, I I met a lot of Chinese people, a lot of people from Vietnam. But anyways, these Chinese guys caught my attention because we're in a political class, and Russia, their classes are hard. They don't have elevators to help their the people that are challenged. You know that you need a wheelchair or need to get on the elevator.
Yeah, yeah,
They
yeah.
don't have that. They fucking find a way to get into the classroom. Like I don't know how, um, but the universities are huge, very nice, but with a little accessibility,
Hmm.
and you have to walk everywhere. You have to read a lot. Like it was just interesting their university life,
Yeah, yeah,
and I remember the classes being hard, bro. Like they weren't easy like over here, like when we went to school.
yeah,
Like
yeah.
a war and terrorism class was we had to read a lot, but it wasn't. It was hard. And anyways, I remember these Chinese guys giving a presentation, and I would always look at the way they acted. They were always well dressed. They would bow, before and after a presentation or before talking. whenever they would ask for a question, when they would raise their hand, they would stand up. You know, like it was interesting.
Yeah, yeah.
And here I was, an American sitting like this, just like.
Yeah, or allowing me to make a presentation in which I incentivize people to take psychedelic drugs, you know?
No, I think the whole thing with psychedelic drugs is that um, it's it can easily be a way to distract yourself from the real world,
Yeah,
but it also can be used as a glimpse to look into, the other side, la muerte, um,
yeah,
the other side of that moon. It gives you a different perspective, and I think it should be kind of used um, for the sake of like geopolitical tensions. Like for example, the dictators, right? Suppose they just take some ayahuasca or some peyote or salvia, right,
hmm,
as a ceremony. What can be done? Would it get worse? So they're like, I really fucking hate you now. They're like, I'm just saying, like what can be done there? Like, would there be more cooperation? Would there be forgiveness? Um, because forgiveness has to deal with a lot with like international ties.
absolutely.
Forgiveness, yeah, yeah.
Yes, with cooperation, yeah. I mean, I will say that maybe like, I'm not talking for my own, perception, like back at UNM when I was like experimenting, I guess I had more of a idealistic view of the world, you know, but, I haven't had that sort of stuff since I came here to Spain, I have just haven't had the time to actually engage in that. And I guess like my mind has been focused more on like problem solving, and absolute pragmatism, you
Mhm.
know, and being more comfortable with things that otherwise, maybe we shouldn't be comfortable with at all, like warfare, or like diplomatic or political intrigues, you know, just accepting that as if that was like a normal part of life, which it might as well really be, But like, it is really hard to say too, because at the same time, it's hard to get psychedelics, I mean, we have the dark web.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'm not saying that,
No, it's hard. Yeah.
I'm not saying like I'm not saying your viewer that they should like download Tor and a VPN and that they should get into like a dark website and buy
Mhm.
some mushrooms and trip 5 grams of mushroom in the dark.
Yeah.
I don't. If you want to do that, go ahead and you know just
Yeah.
download Tor and VPN. You know.
Yeah. I think the accessibility part is kind of interesting because uh, where are you gonna get ayahuasca in Russia, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. And also, where are you gonna? How are you gonna get acid into North Korea?
Yeah. Good luck with that.
Yeah. And also, like, I'm not I'm not totally for it as well because the way people use it, especially in the West, they do it like at concerts.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, there's no real ceremony to it, right? There's no
Yeah.
sacrifice. There's no like where you fast, where you work out, where you run, you work. You abstain from everything, and you're very ceremonious about it.
Yeah.
I
And
don't
it's
think.
I will say that, for example, like within Europe, because there is still like a church, like a church institution or a Christian institution. I feel like, for example, like Christianity could actually use some of those psychedelic, for example, elements. You know, I think that's it could be one way to do it, and I feel like in the context of Europe, it would work because that is pretty much what most people actually grow with. It's like you cannot make like some English person, suddenly get into like Rastafari or like some like Mesoamerican cultural because it's not something that he grew with, you know. Same way that it's hard, for example, for like a Western person to like get into like Buddhism or like Hinduism, you know,
Mhm.
or like any of like this Eastern philosophy, which I deeply respect. But after a while, you realize that maybe I'm not really wired for this, you know.
Mhm.
Whereas like the more, you know, like Abrahamic or you know more of like within like the structures of like Western theology, they could actually benefit from like this more like I want to call it what will be the term? Direct experience. Let's call it. You know, like because I would consider myself a theosophist. You know,
Yeah.
and it's you know I believe in God, but my belief in God is not on the basis of what some weird guy on an altar told me. My belief in God is direct experience.
Mhm.
You know.
Yeah, which was what McKenna proposed quite a bit was the direct related experience was would bear the truth above other filters. I think even I might be wrong about this, but I think towards the end of his death, because I think he died from a tumor,
Yeah.
uh, he I think he questions how much cannabis he smoked. I don't think there was a relation between the smoking and the tumor, but I
Yeah.
think he had something in his head where it's like, I think this could have been the cause, right?
Uh,
I don't think
correlation
it
is
was, but I think just because he thought about it was he. I think McKenna could have was engulfed in the art, right? He was engulfed in the art.
yeah.
He's the one that brought up Salvia divinorum and how that's the mother of all psychedelics.
Hmm. I
No
haven't
one,
done it.
no one says that, but Salvia divinorum can be found in Mexico, and I think that was an interesting point that he made. He didn't say ayahuasca, he didn't say peyote, he didn't say mushrooms. He said Salvia divinorum.
I think I mean the reason why salvia is legal is because it's no one's mains, you know. It's not no one's main drug, you know. I also think the
Because
it's
it's so
because
trippy. It's probably so crazy.
it's insane, man. Like I had a, I think with salvia, I think it's because people do it badly, you know.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
they're not
People
supposed to.
smoke it. They say
You
that she
shouldn't
doesn't
smoke.
like to be smoked. She wants to be like a brew.
Yeah, either a brew or maybe like a chewed one, you know.
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
Yeah, yeah. Like smoking is kind of like attacking the plant, and if you attack the plant will attack you back, you know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Do you do you want to keep going, man? How you feel?
Oof. I could go all day, man. You know,
Cool.
I mean, we haven't even talked about Venezuela. You know,
Yeah, let me
I
see
mean,
how we are on the live. It looks like we're good, man. Like,
do we have viewers?
no, but at least it's live.
All right, all right.
Yeah, it looks
Hello,
good.
people.
It looks good, man.
Yeah,
I think I
awesome, man.
think I think we should keep going.
All right, all right. You know, let me get some water real quick. Let me take a break.
Yeah,
Give me 50 seconds.
yeah, you're good, man.
All right, here I am. Ugh. Woo.
All right, so we're gonna touch on a current crisis that's happening.
Yeah,
Uh, it's not Palestine. It's not Ukraine. It's something that's maybe a little bit more home to us. You know, you're Venezuelan. I've been to Venezuela.
yeah.
Uh, there's protests happening as we speak all over Venezuela. What's your perspective?
Well, we talk about this like in the last interview, in the last podcast, and I realized that, for example, I sounded I was very angry, and I think it's natural for me to actually be angry about it, especially because I lived in Venezuela for a good chunk of my life, and I saw how like the situation deteriorated in there, like the high amount of corruption, the 8 million Venezuelan people live in the country because of like the political, social chaos, the criminality, the economic disaster, the inflation, all because like the bad management, corruption of the government. On July, there was a election, you know, and I was already kind of expecting that there was going to be a lot of fuckery going on because the person who was actually meant to be the candidate was Maria Corina Machado, but she was elected by the opposition primaries, but the Supreme Court just out of nowhere, without any justification, decided that she shouldn't be. She was not going to be the candidate. Then they chose someone else. I don't remember. She was like a professor, neither her. So in the end, they chose like Edmundo Gonzalez. And well, elections came in, and another irregularity that there was is that the people outside the country could not vote. 8 million Venezuelans could not vote on the elections of their country if they were outside the country. I could not vote. I tried to, but like the consulates were closed or they just made it completely impossible for you to actually like be able to vote. Or they will like demand like exorbitance about some money, you
Hmm.
know, in order to do like a process. Out of 8 million people, Venezuelans outside the country, only 50,000 voted. You know, like come on.
A little bit, yeah.
It's insane. And, that's election tampering. Elections happens, I mean, even the polls, back then they were saying that Edmundo was going to win. They announced the elections out of nowhere. They did not actually count the votes, and they just said that Maduro won with 51% of the votes, and Edmundo Gonzalez had like 41% of the votes. And there was a lot of irregularities going on with the elections. Like paramilitary groups, what we call the colectivos,
Mhm.
which are paramilitary groups that actually receive guns and weapons from the government in order to like terrorize political opposition. And they also commit crimes and delinquency because why not? It's a way of making money. They were terrorizing like opposition voters. There were reports of like the tampering of like electoral boxes. You know, some people were not allowed to vote by the police. They announced the elections. Maduro won, but here's the interesting part. And this was actually very intelligent by Maria Corina, and is that she made it so like the opposition electoral witnesses, the witnesses, by the constitution, they have a right to actually like carry to get a copy of the electoral acts, which is like the papers that actually like say like the results that they are signing by like the what is it called uh, by the witnesses, you know,
Mhm.
and they were actually able to get 80% of them, you know, and it's being actually proven that actually, yeah, these are legit documents. And they were actually able to like publish them like 24 hours after the announcement of the elections. And they actually gave Edmundo Gonzalez a overwhelming victory. He won by a lot in every single state, man. He won even in Barinas. That
Mhm.
is where Chavez is from. You know,
Mhm.
that's how sick the people are tired of like the government.
Yeah, he
Me,
declared victory, right?
Maduro
Like
declared victory. Yeah.
at the and Edmundo.
And it turns out that the votes, according to like the electoral acts published by the opposition, which have been verified
Mhm.
and like there's no proof against them, actually give victory to Edmundo Gonzalez.
Mhm.
Meanwhile, the government has not published any of the electoral acts, even though by law they should have done it within 48 hours after the last after like the last close of the polling stations.
Mhm.
It's been almost 20 days and they have not published a single thing, you know. And what does this tell you? There was a obvious and complete fraud in Venezuela. And the fraud is being maintained by like the political ruling class of Venezuela, the people who are like within like the Socialist Party of Venezuela, which is pretty much the child of Chavez, and also the military, who are also part of like the the new oligarchy of
Mhm.
Venezuela.
Yeah, the do you think there could be this is a long shot, right? This is a long shot. But do you think there's more possibility of foreign incursions into Venezuela, or do you think a civil war in Venezuela is more likely to happen?
I will say no to foreign intervention
The
because
only reason I the only
the
reason I
key
say that is because the U.S. perspective about incursions into Mexico, um, Russia's interest in Venezuela,
yeah,
uh,
yeah.
yeah,
I will
Iran's
say
interest in Venezuela.
no, no, yeah. Iran is in Venezuela, China is in Venezuela. You know, like Venezuela is a strategic region. You know,
Hmm.
it is like in the center of the Americas.
Hmm.
And I mean, one thing, for example, is that Russia and China actually consolidated the debt of Venezuela, but in exchange, they actually got hold of like diamond mining operations in the country. You know, it's like so much for anti-imperialism. You know.
Musk is like, fuck, they beat me to it.
You know, but it's like I don't think that foreign intervention is going to happen. I think America, first of all, it will be unpopular, because America is kind of burned out after Iraq and Afghanistan, and I think that for the most part, for most of the American public, it will be just like getting inside the internal affairs of another country.
Yeah,
Even if, for example, most Venezuelans will maybe support actually such intervention.
yeah, 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 yeah.
But the other thing is that also key important countries, Brazil and Colombia, have been pretty lenient with Venezuela. I mean, they have so far not recognized Maduro yet, which is good. And they have demanded electoral acts, like, hey, actually show us the ballots, like we want to see it. And they haven't done it yet.
Mhm.
However, is that that's it. You know, they have not actually like recognized the victory of the opposition. And like some of their suggestions about what to do have been extremely lukewarm, if not to call absurd. Like Lula da Silva saying that there should be an electoral repetition. We already had an election. We already have verified results of the elections. You know, another electoral repetition is not going to do anything. You know, and if anything, will make the situation worse because now the government will make sure that the opposition does not get any copy of the ballot boxes. So there will be more like a room for like deniability for when they also commit once again fraud. You know, that does not help at all. You know,
No.
but it's also because Brazil also has an economic interest in Venezuela. They're better off than we're doing it with Maduro, perhaps. Petro, is like an ideological align with that sort of like the Latin American left.
Mhm.
I will make the argument though that if you were to tell me like an example or like and the Latin American left that was actually very healthy, it would be Chile with Gabriel Boric, who actually came out and said like these elections were total bullshit. There was obviously fraud. Like Edmundo clearly won. Like he was the only one who actually came out and said like demanding for there to actually be like justice in the
Mhm.
country. In Spain, and just how you see like how much like Spanish politics has degraded over the last years, our vice president, at the beginning, she actually recognized Maduro's victory, you know.
Mhm.
And Zapatero, who used to be president of Spain, and he's actually kind of like the tutor of our current president, Pedro Sanchez, has actually, made calls to we should not demand the Venezuelan government to actually like demonstrate the ballot boxes because we will be playing into the games of the far right. You know, most ridiculous statement I've ever heard in my life. You know, or like one of like the key leaders of Podemos, for example, like one of the founders, for example, Juan Carlos Monederos. He actually received like 400,000 euros from Venezuela. He actually had to declare that to the tax agency here in Spain. He lives in Venezuela. He does like videos supporting the regime. Like
Mhm.
he's a good puppy. He'll be his master. And of course, like people like Irene Montero, like also recognizing the elections. It seems that I think that someone who was actually grown up, like actually grown up within the government, actually grabbed like the vice president, like Yolanda Diaz, and told her like, "Shut the fuck up," you know, like do something else, not this, because there was clearly something fucked up with this. But nonetheless, the fact that it happened, and that there was like that lukewarm reaction at the beginning, it is worrisome, you know, especially because that is kind of like the ideological basis or like some of the more like left-leaning parties of Spain.
Mhm. Do do you think there's over here in the states the I think Venezuelans are getting kind of mal ojo over
Mhm.
here because you can go on the internet and be like Venezuelan illegal immigrant did this, and obviously the Biden administration made it relatively harder for Venezuelan asylum seekers at some point. Um, that can be debatable, but either way, let's just say that I think Venezuelans kind of got like a periscope on them. They because they could be voters against the establishment.
Yeah, yeah.
Because majority of Venezuelans are going to Florida, um, and obviously Venezuelans are not necessarily they're not right, but they're definitely not left. Yeah.
Oh no,
S-
they will vote Republican, man. I assure
yeah,
you.
yeah. It's not to say that they're like that though, right? But they're definitely not going to go to the left.
Yeah,
They're not. They don't have that perspective. Um, so I just wonder, like, it's interesting that the establishment made it harder, and the media is making it that Venezuelans have a bad taste here in the United States.
it's funny.
Yeah, and I'm just like, well, that's interesting because, sure, I mean, like the crime and whatever, that's I get it, but it's like they're Venezuelans can be a huge turning point in American policy because of they're the group. There's people from China coming. There's people from Africa coming, India, everywhere. And out of all of them, it can be the Venezuelans that are going to be pro US out of all the other
Yeah,
migrant groups. I mean, that's a general. I'm just being
I think
general.
the Chinese are also pretty pro-American too. Like they got like the whole image of like the moral minority. Going on
True,
to you
true.
know, and yeah, I mean like Asian American, they actually tend to do pretty well. You know,
Yeah,
compared to like the median American actually.
yeah, yeah. Yeah.
Uh, Go ahead, go ahead.
No, I just think that like I believe in help. I don't know who it was, man. It was just like on the news or on a podcast. I don't remember, but they were just kind of like making the point that you shouldn't help immigrants and that you shouldn't and that border patrol are making the wrong decision and letting them in.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
for me, I'm very lenient, right? I'm like, bro, like fucking give them the water, the pan, the English class. You know, like I don't know, like I don't
Yeah.
know.
No,
That's purely humanitarian for me. You know.
no, absolutely. It's just I would say that this is where where we get like into debate is that generally speaking, I am pro immigration, but one has to also recognize that not all immigrations are the same. You know,
Yeah.
and this is actually an interesting this is something that I was hearing before. I'm not sure really sure how true this is. But like in the context of like the United States, because I don't really notice it so much here in Venezuela, but in the United States, there is kind of like this difference in between like Mexican migrants and Venezuelan migrants, and is that Mexican migrants tend to like keep to themselves as much as possible, you know, like just keep quiet, just work, stick with your family, and that's it. Venezuelans, on the other hand, they'll let you know that they're Venezuelan, like you notice them, and this is where and by the way, I'm saying this as a Venezuelan myself,
Mhm.
is that Venezuelans do have a certain cultural baggage, you know, in which there is like an influence of like la picaresca, el criollismo, a little bit of like that, like that lack of how do I call it? Like trying to circumnavigate, instead of like actually like like enforcing like or accepting like the rules as they are.
Mhm.
Now this is a stereotype, and to be honest, I'm not entirely sure if this is actually true or not, because I would also be surprised if there's also like an electoral thing going on. I don't know if you remember like that there was like the dry food policy in which Cubans arriving to Florida or the United States, immediately as they set foot on the United States, they were granted, as asylum
Mhm.
and residentship. That was eliminated under Obama, and some people say that it was in order for American Cuba to actually like normalize their relationships. But that actually fell off with Trump, and Trump actually never like reinstated like the dry food policy because it would go kind of weird with like his anti-immigration rhetoric. But I also cannot avoid but to think that the reason why Obama actually decided to abolish that policy is because the Democrats were worried that the Cubans were voting too much Republican, especially in a key state like Florida, which is a
Mhm.
swing state,
Yeah.
in which it really matters to actually be able to get like those electoral colleges in the region. And this is where I'm like touching like different, perspective. Like some of it could be like cultural. It is true that, for example, like with immigration, especially with massive immigration, it is unavoidable that there's going to be like an increase in crime, but also some of it is like political tendencies.
Mhm.
You know,
Do you think, hypothetically speaking, suppose there's a civil war in the United States, which is a possibility now? it's, dude, it's like, first of all, we have budget issues. We have attempted assassinations. We have incompetent leaders. We have technological movements that are buying political ideologies, right? Like people that are in the tech space are now getting into politics, um, and they're influencing heavily what is purported out there. But what I'm trying to say is this: is that suppose there's a civil war. Do you think these migrants, not all of them, but because of the disarray of the migration situation, do you think they can be used as a proxy to fight for, let's say, the Democrats or for the Republicans?
I think I think
Or
that
do you
less.
think it could be legitimate, like American people that want to be like just straight up American citizens in the war, or do you think it's gonna be a mix, or how do you think they'll play?
I think that it will depend on like the individual situation of the migrants fundamentally, and it's because who are the people who tend to migrate the most? Like people who migrate are people who are less so much interested like in the country, and they're more interested in like what they can do in a country that will benefit them and their family. You know, so I think that first of all, if a civil war were to happen, you will have a massive exile of like people leaving the country. Like trying to save what they can and like fleeing to like other countries, maybe their countries of origin, maybe Mexico,
Yeah.
Canada. How the tables have turned.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
Yeah, but again, it also really depends on like what type of migrant we're talking about, because maybe like someone who's like second or third generation,
Hmm.
someone who actually has a stake in their
Yeah.
country, maybe like
Yeah.
land or something along those lines, you know, they might be more likely to, fight.
Hmm.
I also think that maybe there will be ideology, but I think we also need to consider that a lot of times people in a civil war don't fight because of their beliefs, but rather they fight because the place where the war, the side in which they are, they just happen to be that side. They just happen to be in that side, so they better answer the right question when they get asked. You know, Trump or Kamala or whatever. You know,
Yeah. Blue or red, fucker. It's like,
what type of American are you?
I'm poor. Yeah, yeah. You can't say you have student loans in a civil war.
Um, I mean, yeah, it's like here in Spain when the Civil War started. A lot of like the deaths, especially like in the first year when the war started, was political persecution. You know, a lot of like the killing started because someone will arrive at your home and they'll ask you, República o monarquía? Republic or monarchy? And you better choose the right fucking answer, because otherwise they'll just, take you outside and they'll execute you.
Yeah, yeah. I think. Do you think New Mexico would have more of a conservative leaning in Civil War or like a liberal leaning in Civil War, or do you think it'd be split?
I think it will depend a lot, like whether it's a rural area or like an urban area. You know,
Sure, there'd be a
urban
split.
areas, yeah, urban areas tend to be more, like more left leaning. I would say that at the immediacy, for example, I think the right wingers, for example, will have the advantage because they have the most guns and they have the rural areas. They have access to food, agriculture. You know, but on the meanwhile, like left leaning, like the Democrats, in this hypothetical civil war, they have the control of the Rust Belt. You know, so if they're able to like resist, they might be able to like create like industrial. Nah, man, I'm playing out. I'm fucking playing out Hearts of Iron 4. I'm not making any sense.
No, no, no. I think what I mentioned about the migrants and that Civil War part was because um, we have pandilleros. There's gang, there's gangs coming with those migrants, and they will. If shit goes to hell, a war starts, battles begin to happen, clashes. People band up together, and
Yeah,
so there can be easily groups that are neither left nor right, and they're just causing havoc all over.
yeah,
So that's what I'm trying to refer to because like you can have military aged people coming across the border, and that doesn't mean they're here for work. They could have been sent uh, by a country like China uh, to infiltrate and cause havoc on a society. But they're maybe thinking ahead, right? They're like, don't do it yet, not yet. Don't act yet. Don't like, turn on the on switch yet. The United States is not in that instability yet. Um, or
I
do
will
you
say
think that's just too conspiratorial?
I think that there is simpler. answer for that. In the case of China, I do believe that China is kind of like using like the fact that America is a very open society and like the international student programs in order to like use that as a leverage so that they can garner intelligence. You know, I mean, America is a technological, industrial, aeronautical powerhouse. And you will want your workers, your people to be able to work in those industries. Not necessarily to make espionage, but even so they can learn, so that they can observe the processes, so that someday they may go back to the country and they'll create something in their country. Like go work for Boeing, make your money, do whatever you want. If you want to come back, we'll help you so you can build our planes. Which is smart. That is what smart countries with long-term planning do. That's what Venezuela used to do back in the 60s and the 70s. Like they will send like their master students, to other countries so that they could learn, like what are they doing, come back, teach us. That was smart. Now, in the case of like Central American migration, and it is kind of connected, similar to like the Moroccan and Spain situation too, is that sometimes it is expensive to maintain prisoners. And what is simpler, just get the fuck out of here, you know, go there.
Mhm.
We don't have a lot of money. We're broke here. They got money, and they'll give you papers.
Mhm.
They'll give you healthcare. You're the victim, actually. You
Yeah,
know, so go there.
yeah,
And I think Bukele was actually accused by the American government that because of how filled like their prisons are, with the Bukele policy, you know, they just send like some of like their criminals to America, you know, because it says it like that, And
yeah,
you're the president of El Salvador. You don't give a fuck. You want to make sure that your country's safe so that
right.
you can prosper yourself. You know?
No, it's true. I think regardless of um, Bukele's perspective, his policy, I think he's probably showing a good example because it sucks, man. Like, you're from Venezuela. I have like a Mexican background. Like, gangs suck. They extort, dude. They're violent.
Yeah,
They're not even a nice violent, bro. They're like machete violent.
exactly. Yeah,
Yeah, it's I kind of get it. I kind of get their perspective and how they're
like
forceful like that.
I believe in habeas corpus. I believe that you're innocent until proven guilty.
Mhm,
But I also believe that that you have a right to like be able to like walk in the streets safely at night without any issues. And I think that less important too is to make sure that you create a situation in which that never happens. You
mhm,
know, like if you have a crime problem, as little as it is, you deal with that. Okay, you deal with that as swift and as fast as possible because you don't want to let that expand itself. I know that this will be criticized as kind of like a broken window policy thinking, but it's true. You know, it is completely true. Like, it is the first time when you do a crime, the heart does, The second time, it just becomes a habit, The second time it's easier, the third time it's just a habit, you
mhm,
know. I wish that the situation in Salvador had not required such a drastic measure. And it's very sad that there are innocent people inside those jails. Many of them are actually being freed right now, like many of them, they're actually like, being examined, they're being investigated, like, okay, we did not find anything wrong with you, get out, you know.
mhm,
But at the same time, it's like you also have to blame like previous administrations because they allowed that to happen
mhm.
in the first place. So Bukele had no other option but to, use an iron fist,
Yeah,
because a situation like that is like a situation like that, you're not going to fix it with building more schools. You know, like you're gonna build more schools, okay, and what's gonna happen to the workers who are gonna build the skill? They're gonna get robbed, or like the teachers, they're gonna walk there, they're gonna get gang raped by like some of like the gang members.
yeah,
Parents will want to send their kids to school, but their kids are gonna get recruited by the gangs
yeah. On the way, yeah.
on the way. and they're gonna get like, fuck school, man. Being a gang member, is cool, man. Easy money.
Yeah,
You'll be strong. You'll be a real man.
yeah.
That's no,
It's
fuck.
common. Yeah, it's common over there. Yeah, yeah, it's common.
Yeah, yeah. And
Yeah,
that's the culture.
yeah, yeah,
And Bukele did the right decision. You
yeah.
know, like I hope he has a long-term plan for like the people who are inside this prison. I hope they actually make a bigger effort, and I think they are, to making sure to separate like the innocent from the guilty. You know,
Yeah, I think they're making a big oven. a,
nah, come on, bro, real.
a 10,000 person oven inside.
Oh, no.
That's not a jail, bro. It's an oven.
I mean, Bukele is actually of Palestinian descent. Did you know that?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Uh,
No,
shit.
but I had like a joke, right? Where like I was talking to someone about the Palestinian, disaster happening, and I said it all went to shit. The reason we're having all these problems is because there was. Do you remember the Pygmy massacre?
The Pygmy massacre.
The Pygmy massacre was a genocide that happened against the Pygmies in Congo.
Oh
Where
yeah, yeah,
their own countrymen. You know what pygmy is, right? It's like a small person.
yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah. They were almost taken off the face of the world, and no one did nothing. No one. Not the UN, not the fucking ICC, not the ICJ, not fucking Japan, no, no, not China. China should have been the first ones there. They should have been like, yo, give them to us. But they would kill the pygmies because they thought like they had special powers, magical powers. They'll eat them, bro.
Yeah, yeah.
It was a cannibalism,
When
and
was that?
it was in Congo. It was in the
Uh,
90s.
there was. I thought it was in Guinea, Papua New Guinea.
We can check, but
It should be like.
I think it was in Congo, and it
Yeah.
was the one of the most recent genocides where cannibalism happened.
Ah, fuck me.
And I made the joke. I was like, hey, if we didn't even save people that like needed our help the most, we're not like the world is not going to save someone, like uh,
Yeah.
in
Like
Palestine or in Ukraine.
I think that, for example, to give credit to like the pro-Palestinian protests, and I actually understand like their logic is that they cannot influence what the Chinese government is going to do, or like the Iranian government is going to do. Like the Chinese, for example, they're committing like genocide against like the people in Xinjiang,
Mhm.
against the Uyghurs,
Years.
But I don't know hear any like left-wing activists like raise their voice. I
Mhm.
actually heard about that because of South Park, you know.
Mhm.
But on the other hand, Israel, it is, you know, considered like part of like the Western countries.
Mhm.
Yeah. Could you give me like 5 seconds?
Yeah, yeah, go for it, dude.
Sorry. Okay. All right, I'm back. Meanwhile, Israel is really considered like a Western country. You know, even though they're in Asia, they're part of like kind of like within like the European sphere. I mean, they were even allowed in Eurovision. You know, and so it kind of made, and Israel has very strong ties with like other European countries and also with the United States. I mean, it doesn't help a lot, for example, that Israel does have a lot of say on American policy. You
Mhm.
know, I mean, the IPAC,
APAC,
you know,
yeah.
the APAC, you know, the, I
Yeah.
can actually see the argument of pro-Palestinian protesters that actually makes sense that we protest here in the West because the West is an important nexus for Israel, so it's more likely to actually make effects. And it has done so because now you have actually like three different European countries recognizing the state of
Mhm.
Palestine. For example, Spain was one of them. Ireland was another country that recognizes Israel. I don't remember the third one. I think it was Sweden or something along those lines.
I think. Do you think? Do you think that maybe there's a correlation, maybe there isn't, but in history, there's a lot of connecting of the dots. Do you think Russia's success in Ukraine will make it a better situation for Palestine? Because
I mean,
Russia is relatively closer to the Palestinian cause, and Ukraine is they're pretty on Israel's side. Ukraine
yeah,
is
yeah.
pretty much very pro-Israel.
It's funny how those things works out, you know.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah. And
Yeah,
it could be that if a Russian victory has more of a sphere of influence, it could help the Palestinian people because they will have a new kind of shift, in the war.
yeah.
Uh, but like, I mean, what do you think though? Like,
I mean, I'm not sure exactly about Ukraine, to be honest, because I actually don't really, I cannot think, at least right now in my head, like the relationship between like the Ukrainian or like the Israeli or like the Palestinian situation,
mhm,
or what will actually like Russia gain from such a conflict. I
mhm,
mean, it will make sense that they will actually benefit from like the annihilation of Israel
mhm,
because it will mean that it will be less competition in the Middle East, you know.
mhm,
And there is like some like points of contention, like for them to like have like some influence in the region, especially as they have like influence in Iran, but also through like you could call it like an absolute or proxy Syria under Bashar al-Assad, which has pretty much like been part of like the within like the anti-Israeli uh, alliance, so to speak. Apart from that, I just don't think that Russia is putting like a lot of efforts into like the whole Palestinian situation because they already got their hands full with both Ukraine and also most recently Mali in North Africa. You know.
no, no, for sure. The I I saw on the U.S. on the Ukrainian government's like page. It could have been like on Instagram, where the government, their department posts victories and all that.
Mhm.
And in the height of the conflict, like after like sometime in October, um, November around there, the Ukrainian government was just posting pro-Israel, pro-Israel, pro-Israel posts, and it kind of makes sense. Like I get it, right? Like there's a lot of Ukrainian Jews that were, there's a lot of Ukrainian Jews,
Yeah,
um, and also like it makes sense for Russia because Russia is more allied with the Arabic world than the Western world is allied with the Arabic world.
yeah,
That's like the U.S. is not so good with the Arabic world.
no,
No, no. But Russia, yeah, they bordered Persia. They are. They are. And I think that I love Ukraine. Like I've been there twice. I love Ukraine. I just think that like a Ukrainian victory or a Ukrainian victorious sphere of influence might deteriorate the the plight of the Palestinians, and a Russian victory will help the plight of the Palestinians.
mayhaps it's
Perhaps,
possible.
perhaps. It's yeah, maybe
Yeah,
not. But
yeah. I mean, it really also like depends how you look at it because there's also like the point of view like I mean, at the end of the day, I feel like the Ukrainians they probably don't really give a fuck about Palestine or Israel, but because they're focused on like fighting their own damn war,
Yeah.
and but they just say it so they can be aligned with the West, you know,
Yeah.
and because
With APAC.
they have every single intention if they survive this war to end up like joining NATO and possibly even like the European Union,
Yeah.
you know. And like now that when we're talking about that, like the recent like Ukrainian counteroffensive against Russia,
Mhm.
like yeah, like that was a huge blow against them,
Yeah.
you know. It, I was actually like reading about how it's possible like for even like Ukraine to like even they have like the possibility of actually like regaining Crimea,
Mhm.
which is very optimistic,
That's very
but
optimistic.
very optimistic.
Mhm.
But in the latest bombardments, the Ukrainians were actually able to like destroy like anti-aircraft weapons that were in Crimea. Also, like the bridges connecting Russia with Crimea, and also like the radar systems. You
Mhm.
know, with all of that, even if they have like just F-16s, which are pretty outdated, they might be able to actually secure air superiority in the region,
Mhm.
and maybe they'll actually try it. Using like the chaos that they've been able to like create in Kursk.
Mhm.
You know, very optimistic. But at the end of the day, I still think that this war is going to end up like the Winter War. You know, I think that yeah, Russia's going to gain some territory, but it's going to be such a Pyrrhic victory, and Russia as a power is just going to be delegitimized
Mhm.
just because of how ineffective and incompetent their military was in regards to like conquering Ukraine.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm of the opinion if you're going to start a war, at least have the decency of winning.
United States is like fuck.
Oh no, America fucked up in Afghanistan big time, bro. And the
Yeah.
thing, the Russians warned them. It's like you don't want to fuck with Afghanistan.
They're all fuck that. Trust us or trust us.
The
Yeah.
Russians were doing what was called the ghost of the Mujahideen.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Like that
Yeah. I
shit.
think.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. I think. I. I don't know, man. Like I said, I think Ukraine and Russia are committing like some sort of their own ethnocide. They're killing their own people. Uh,
Hmm.
it's Slavic people are Slavic people. Um, I just think that like Russia is a weird part of the world. They have they're the biggest landmass. They have a declining population. Um, so I just think if like right now it's literally the West versus the East. That's it. Like it's not conservative, liberal. It's not none of that. It's just literally boom, boom. You
And
know,
even then,
religions. It could be Christianity and Islam. At the end.
and in the end, I think like even such a thing is so simplistic too.
Yeah.
I
I
mean,
wouldn't trust a Christian with the nuclear codes, nor would I trust a fundamental, Islamist.
no, definitely, nah, nah. I mean, yeah, we've been talking for quite a while, like
Yeah,
two
man.
hours.
I
Yeah,
think we should call it.
yeah, man. Oh,
Um, I'll send you the recording and to see if we like it. If we like it, we'll do like another one next week or something.
fuck yeah, man. Let's do it.
All right, man. I'll send it to you later,
All right, man.
bro. Thanks.
Man, that was fun. That was fun.
Yeah, man. Dude,
Whew.
if it gets better, bro, like the YouTube thing, man, we should just fucking do it.
Joe, I'm down, man. I
I'm,
wish we were like, I wish we were like in person, because then we could have like a coaster place, maybe like better cameras and shit.
yeah, and go
Like,
out and do it.
yeah, yeah. You should try to get a better laptop, though.
Yeah. No,
Or
and Dude, if it gets better, bro, the YouTube thing, man, I'll change the ownership for so it can be half and half, me and you. Yeah. It's just
Man,
getting better, bro. Like there's always subscribers every day. Like I'm like 50% monetized.
oh
So
fuck, that's cool.
yeah, it's just I need that other 50%. The 50% are like interviews like this, you know.
Yo, man, like if you need actually any help with stuff like editing or anything, like you do your own editing, or do you like hire someone to do it?
No, no, I it's not good enough to have editing.
Hmm.
Yeah, not yet, not yet.
I feel like some editing, like because like people's attention span is getting shittier by the day.
Yeah,
Like podcast wise, I only listen to like Joe Rogan, but I think that for example, it will help. For example, if we could like, this is going to sound stupid, but maybe like short format, like 60 seconds clip. We
yeah,
like the most uh, uh this is this. Sorry. Like the most like stupid or like the most
yeah,
like the thing that sounds like a soundbite,
yeah,
that people will be able to quote, like that shit actually spreads like fire, you
yeah,
know, and you post that like on Instagram or like either Instagram or YouTube,
yeah.
you know,
All right, man.
if you want, like I
Yeah,
could do some of that,
yeah, 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 dude.
yeah.
Let's I'll send you the este, and then we'll see how it goes.
Oh man, I'm actually excited.
Yeah, dude, it'll be cool, man. Like I said, I'll send you the link, and I think I'm gonna just get started with my day, bro. It's gonna be 12 o'clock, so
Yeah. Here is like 7:30 p.m. Like I'm tired now.
nice,
I'm just gonna, yeah.
bro. Well, it
Yeah,
was cool to talk to you, man.
yeah, man. It's Tuesday
Yeah,
or
yeah,
like awesome, man.
yeah,
Ciao,
yeah.
man.
I'll
Ciao,
talk to you
bello.
later.